My name is Stephanie Mitchell, 35 years old, and I never thought I'd be the woman who emptied the bank accounts and walked away. But when you overhear your husband of 7 years tell his father that you're just a business expense, after his family spent years calling you useless, something inside you breaks and rebuilds. Stronger, smarter. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do with our joint finances and the $15,000 anniversary vacation I'd planned. Let's just say his panic was absolutely priceless. Before I continue with my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you've ever felt undervalued in a relationship, hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how I turned the tables on my ungrateful husband. I met Jackson Parker at an industry conference in Chicago 8 years ago. At the time, I was leading marketing campaigns for a mid-sized tech company, having worked my way up from entry-level over 6 years. My presentation on digital engagement strategies had just wrapped up when Jackson approached me, all confident smiles and intelligent questions. He was handsome in that clean-cut corporate way, with dark hair always perfectly styled and blue eyes that seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. Our connection was immediate. Both ambitious professionals in our late 20s, we spoke the same language of quarterly projections and market disruption, but there was something more. A spark that transcended professional admiration. After exchanging business cards and LinkedIn profiles, we ended up talking until the hotel bar closed. 2 weeks later, he flew to Seattle where I was based just to take me to dinner. The whirlwind romance that followed was everything I thought only existed in movies. Weekend flights across the country, long phone calls discussing everything from childhood memories to dream vacations. Jackson respected my career and seemed proud to date a woman with her own professional identity. "You're not just beautiful but brilliant," he would say, making me feel seen in ways no previous boyfriend ever had. After 8 months of dating long distance, Jackson proposed during a surprise trip to Napa Valley. The ring was stunning. A 3-carat diamond that caught the sunset as he knelt among the vineyards. Without hesitation, I said yes. We were equals embarking on building a life together, or so I thought. The first year of marriage was blissful. We both maintained our separate jobs, splitting our time between Seattle and Boston where Jackson worked. We made joint financial decisions, divided household responsibilities, and supported each other's career ambitions. When we were apart, we scheduled virtual dinner dates and sent each other care packages. Marriage felt like gaining a teammate, not losing independence. Everything changed when Jackson was offered a promotion to Vice President of Business Development at his company, a substantial leap that would nearly double his already impressive salary. The catch? We would need to relocate permanently to Boston. After many late-night discussions about our future, I agreed to leave my position in Seattle. Jackson assured me that with my experience, I'd quickly find an equivalent role in Boston, and his increased salary would cushion any temporary financial imbalance. "This is an investment in our future," he said, holding my hands across our kitchen table. "We're a team, Steph. Your career matters just as much as mine." We purchased a stunning colonial house in Brookline, an affluent neighborhood with tree-lined streets and excellent schools for the children we planned to have. The house was 3 times larger than my Seattle apartment, with a gourmet kitchen, home office, and backyard perfect for entertaining. At first, settling into our new life felt like an adventure we were tackling together. But subtle shifts began almost immediately. Jackson's new position demanded longer hours and frequent business dinners. His company's culture expected spouses to attend social functions, where I was introduced not as a marketing professional but as Jackson's wife. When I mentioned job hunting, Jackson would say, "Take your time finding the perfect fit. We're financially comfortable." Then came the introductions to Jackson's family, the Parkers, old New England money with strong opinions about social status and appearances. His father Harold, a retired investment banker, would quiz me about my family background, barely concealing his disappointment that my father was a high school teacher and my mother a nurse. His mother Vivian, always impeccably dressed with pearls and perfect hair, would survey our home with critical eyes, subtly rearranging things when she thought I wasn't looking. "You're so lucky Jackson chose you," she said during one of her first visits, as if I'd won a lottery rather than formed an equal partnership. "Not many men in his position would marry someone from Your background. I tried maintaining my professional identity through freelance marketing projects, but Jackson subtly discouraged it. Why stress yourself with deadlines when you don't need to? He'd ask. Besides, I'd love coming home to a nice dinner instead of takeout. When I landed a project with a promising startup, Jackson barely acknowledged it, changing the subject to his company's recent acquisition. At social gatherings with his colleagues, Jackson would interrupt my conversations about my past work achievements. Stephanie's being modest, he'd say with a laugh. Her real talent is making our house the most welcoming on the block. The first time it happened, I thought he was just nervous having me meet his team. By the fifth time, I recognized the pattern of diminishment. Gradually, I found myself slipping into the role everyone seemed to expect. The supportive corporate wife who managed the household, planned the dinner parties, and kept herself presentable for company functions. My marketing expertise was redirected toward perfecting our home's aesthetic and planning Jackson's business events. My professional network in Boston consisted mostly of other executives' wives, women who filled their days with charity committees and fitness classes. The woman who once led boardroom presentations and closed major client deals was disappearing, and I wasn't sure how to find her again. The equal partnership I thought I'd entered was tilting dramatically, with my worth increasingly tied to how well I supported Jackson's success rather than creating my own. By our third year of marriage, Jackson's late nights at the office had become the norm rather than the exception. Texts saying "don't wait up" arrived with increasing frequency, and our conversations had dwindled to household logistics and weekend plans with his family. When I'd ask about his work, he'd give vague answers before claiming exhaustion, but his energy would mysteriously return when his phone buzzed with messages from colleagues. I found connection through a friendship with Alicia Bennett, a former financial analyst who lived 3 doors down. Unlike the other neighborhood wives who seemed content discussing household staff and vacation homes, Alicia had sharp insights and asked questions that made me think. During our morning walks, she noticed things I'd been trying to ignore. "Does Jackson always talk over you like that?" she asked after a neighborhood barbecue. "And I couldn't help but notice you apologize 4 times for things that weren't your fault." I brushed off her concerns, but they planted seeds of awareness I couldn't unroot. When our 5th anniversary approached, I planned a special dinner at home, wearing the dress Jackson had once said was his favorite. He arrived 2 hours late, reeking of scotch, claiming he'd completely forgotten, in the midst of closing an important deal. The carefully prepared meal had long gone cold. "Don't make that face, Steph," he said, loosening his tie. "It's not like you had anything else important to do today." The casual cruelty of his words stung worse than the forgotten anniversary. What had happened to the man who used to send flowers to my office just because it was Tuesday? My responsibilities at home had expanded to include virtually everything. I managed our social calendar, arranged home maintenance, handled all cooking and cleaning despite Jackson's promise we'd hire help, and even took over his personal shopping and gift buying for his family and colleagues. When I asked for appreciation, Jackson would say, "But this is your domain. I don't expect thanks for closing business deals." His mother Vivian's visits became increasingly difficult to endure. During a Sunday brunch at our home, she examined the freshly baked pastries I'd woken at 5 a.m. to prepare. "It's lovely that you have so much time for hobbies," she said, delicately breaking a croissant. "Real working women barely have time to shower, let alone bake." She turned to Jackson. "Your father and I were worried when you married someone without family connections or substantial career prospects, but I suppose she's found her niche keeping house." Jackson chuckled indulgently while I sat frozen, waiting for him to defend me. The defense never came. Later that week, while searching for insurance documents, I discovered Jackson had been keeping financial details from me. Though my name was on our joint accounts, I realized I had no idea how much he actually earned or where much of it went. When I raised the issue, Jackson dismissed my concerns. "Why do you need to worry about all that financial stuff? I make sure the bills are paid and you have your shopping money. Isn't that enough?" Shopping money was his term for the allowance he deposited into my personal account, as if my expenses were frivolous rather than necessary for maintaining our home and appearance. The discovery that he thought of our finances as exclusively his made my stomach churn. "We're supposed to be partners," I said. I gave up my career to support yours. I should at least know our financial situation. Jackson sighed as if I was being unreasonable. You're overreacting as usual. I handle the finances because it's what I'm good at. Just like you handle the social stuff. Division of labor, Steph. It's efficient. Efficient seemed to be his new favorite word. Applied to anything that benefited him while diminishing me. My anxiety about financial dependence grew as I realized how vulnerable my position had become. Without recent work experience or my own substantial savings, I had gradually been maneuvered into complete reliance on Jackson. The power imbalance that had developed so subtly now seemed glaringly obvious. Around this time, Jackson began mentioning his colleague Amanda Harris with increasing frequency. She was the new director of strategic partnerships, young, ambitious, with an MBA from Wharton. First, I thought nothing of it until I noticed how his voice changed when he spoke about her, the same animation he once had talking about my work. Amanda totally gets the vision for the Asian expansion, he'd say. She's pulling together projections that will blow the board away. I made efforts to rekindle our relationship, planning date nights, trying to engage him in conversations beyond household matters, even suggesting we see a marriage counselor. Jackson brushed off each attempt. We don't need therapy, he scoffed. We have the perfect life. All my colleagues are jealous of how I have everything. Great job, beautiful home, attractive wife who doesn't nag me about working late. What more could either of us want? What more could I want? Perhaps to be seen as a person rather than an acquisition? To be valued for my mind rather than my decorative quality? To be treated as a partner rather than a possession? The final revelation came when reviewing our credit card statement. Among Jackson's charges were several from high-end jewelry stores and restaurants I'd never been to. When confronted, he claimed they were business expenses for client gifts. But the dates corresponded with times he'd told me he was working late at the office. The emerald bracelet charged to our card never appeared among my gifts, nor did the dinner for two at the exclusive restaurant where we'd had our first Boston date. The evidence mounted, but I still wasn't ready to face what it meant. Instead, I buried my suspicions and focused on being even more perfect, as if excellence in my assigned role might somehow restore the respect that had eroded between us. The dinner party was my idea, a strategic attempt to showcase my value to Jackson and his family. I spent 3 days preparing a 4-course meal featuring Harold's favorite beef Wellington and Vivian's preferred chocolate souffle. The table settings were immaculate, with fresh flowers, polished silver, and the expensive crystal Vivian had given us as a wedding gift that had remained unused until now. Jackson's brother Kevin arrived first with his wife Diana, who immediately complimented the elegant table setting. "This must have taken you all day," she said with genuine appreciation. "What else would she do with her time?" Kevin laughed, accepting the scotch Jackson handed him. "That's the dream, isn't it? No alarm clocks, no performance reviews, just deciding between yoga class and lunch with the girls." I smiled tightly, thinking of the 12-hour day I just spent cooking and cleaning, while simultaneously coordinating the repair of our heating system and organizing Jackson's upcoming business trip to London. When Harold and Vivian arrived, Vivian immediately rearranged the flower centerpiece I'd carefully assembled. "Let me fix this for you, dear. Presentation is everything when you're entertaining at this level." Throughout the appetizer course, conversation revolved around Jackson's recent success, securing a major client. He detailed the negotiations while everyone listened attentively, occasionally glancing at me as if surprised by the quality of the food. "Jackson's absolutely killing it at work," Kevin said, raising his wine glass. "The Parker men know how to build empires while their women create beautiful homes. Perfect division of labor." "Some women manage both," Diana said quietly, referencing her own work as a pediatrician. Kevin patted her hand condescendingly. "And you're exhausted all the time, honey. Wouldn't you rather have Stephanie's life? All the perks of Jackson's success without the stress." As I served the main course, Vivian sighed appreciatively at the perfectly cooked beef. "Well, I suppose being decorative but essentially useless in the real world does leave one with time to master domestic arts." I froze midway through setting down Harold's plate, waiting for Jackson to object to his mother calling me useless. Instead, he chuckled and topped off her wine glass. Mother's just jealous that Dad never gave her the life of leisure I provide for Stephanie, he said with a wink. Vivian sniffed. I contributed by raising successful children and managing charitable foundations. Hardly comparable to arranging flowers and attending spa days. The conversation continued around me as if I wasn't there, dissecting my life and worth while I served the food I'd spent days preparing. Something inside me detached, watching the scene from above, for people diminishing my existence while eating the meal I created, in the home I maintained, wearing clothes I had selected and purchased for my husband. After serving dessert, I excused myself to retrieve coffee from the kitchen. Passing Jackson's home office, I noticed the door ajar, with his voice coming from inside. He must have slipped away during the transition between courses. Approaching quietly, I heard him speaking to his father, who had apparently followed him. Dad, don't worry about the Thompson contract. I've got it under control, Jackson was saying. Amanda's research was crucial. She's really proving her value to the team. And what about the expense reports showing all those dinners with her? Harold asked. Your mother noticed the charges. There was a pause before Jackson replied. Business development requires relationship building. Besides, keeping Stephanie happy is just a business expense too. The house, the allowance, the upcoming Bali trip. Small price for having everything running smoothly at home. Harold chuckled. True enough. Though between us, seems like a high cost for someone who doesn't contribute much. In my day, wives at least brought family connections or substantial dowries. Stephanie has her uses, Jackson replied. She's great with my clients' wives, runs the house perfectly, and never complains about my hours. The Bali trip will keep her occupied planning and shopping for another few months, worth every penny to maintain domestic tranquility, while I focus on what matters. I stood frozen, the coffee pot growing cold in my hands. On Jackson's computer screen, I could see our joint account statement open, showing significant withdrawals to accounts I didn't recognize. Next to it was his email, with a message from Amanda discussing our special dinner, and thanking him for the perfect gift. The perfect gift, likely the emerald bracelet that matched her eyes, purchased on the credit card I monitored but had been too trusting to question forcefully. I must have made a sound because Jackson suddenly looked up. His expression shifted from surprise to annoyance at being caught. Stephanie, it's rude to eavesdrop, he said, closing his laptop. Is coffee ready? You think I'm a business expense? My voice was barely audible. Jackson rolled his eyes. You're taking things out of context. Dad and I were discussing financial planning. And Amanda? The withdrawals from our joint account? The bracelet. His face hardened. Going through my things now? Amanda is a valued colleague, and my finances aren't your concern. This is exactly why I handle the money. You get emotional and irrational. I get emotional about my husband having secret accounts and buying jewelry for another woman. My voice rose despite my effort to stay calm. Lower your voice, Jackson hissed. We have guests. We'll discuss this later. No, let's discuss it now. What else am I useful for besides being your live-in maid and social secretary? What else am I besides a business expense? Harold cleared his throat awkwardly. I'll rejoin the others, he muttered, slipping past me. Once his father left, Jackson's demeanor changed completely. You're making a scene over nothing. Amanda is a colleague. The accounts are investments I'm managing for our future. And you're acting hysterical. This is exactly why I don't involve you in financial decisions. Our joint account has my name on it. Those are our shared assets. Assets I earned, he snapped, his mask of civility dropping entirely. What exactly have you contributed financially in the last 5 years, Stephanie? Who pays for this house? Your clothes? The Bali vacation you've been obsessing over? A little gratitude would be appropriate. The clarity that washed over me in that moment was almost dizzying. 5 years of diminishment, gaslighting, and gradual erasure crystallized into perfect understanding. I had become a possession rather than a partner. I need some air, I said, setting down the coffee pot. Fine. Pull yourself together and come back with dessert coffee. We'll discuss your inappropriate behavior later. Jackson straightened his tie and returned to the dining room, all charming smiles for his family. I heard him make an excuse for me as I slipped out the back door into our perfectly landscaped garden. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from Jackson. Emergency at work. Need to go in after dinner. Don't wait up. On a Friday night. Another lie so transparent now that I could see clearly. I sat on the garden bench, tears finally coming as I mourned not just my marriage but the independent woman I had allowed to be slowly suffocated. The woman who had once commanded boardrooms and led marketing teams would never have accepted being called useless or treated as a transaction. As the tears dried on my face, something hardened within me. I may have been complicit in my own diminishment, but I could choose to stop it now. Looking back at the brightly lit dining room where the Parkers continued eating and laughing without concern for my absence, I made a decision. It was time to show them exactly how useful I could be. I wiped the last tears from my face and returned to the kitchen, mechanically serving coffee and playing the perfect hostess for the remainder of the evening. While the Parkers discussed Jackson's recent promotion and Kevin's new boat, I observed them with new eyes, seeing clearly the subtle exchange of condescending glances when I spoke, the way they talked around me rather than to me. After they left and Jackson departed for his emergency meeting, I sat down at our dining room table with my laptop. For the first time in years, I approached our household like the business problem it was, applying the strategic thinking that had once made me successful in my career. First, I examined our financial situation. Though my name was on our joint checking and savings accounts, I discovered I had limited access to investment accounts Jackson had opened. Using his carelessly saved passwords, I uncovered multiple accounts I'd never known about, including one with regular transfers to a downtown condo address I didn't recognize. The Bali vacation I'd spent months planning, supposedly our second honeymoon to celebrate 7 years of marriage, had been paid for entirely from our joint account. $15,000 for luxury accommodations, first-class flights, and exclusive experiences, all carefully researched and arranged by me. The next morning, I called Alicia and asked if we could meet for coffee, away from our neighborhood. At the quiet cafe downtown, I shared my discoveries. "I'm not surprised," she said, stirring her latte. "The way Jackson speaks to you at neighborhood functions made me uncomfortable from day one. But finding out he's been hiding money and possibly having an affair, that's beyond disrespectful." "I don't even know what my rights are," I admitted. "Everything's in both our names, but he acts like it's all his." Alicia set down her spoon. "Actually, I can help with that. Before I left finance, I worked with many women in similar situations. Legally, joint accounts belong equally to both parties, regardless of who earned the money." She pulled out her tablet and showed me relevant laws regarding marital assets in Massachusetts. "The key is documentation. Start keeping records of everything, all the household work you do, every expense you manage, any contributions you've made to his career success." That afternoon, I began meticulously documenting my contributions to our household and Jackson's career. I calculated the market value of the services I provided: personal assistant, housekeeper, cook, event planner, stylist, and social secretary. I documented the countless dinner parties I'd hosted for his clients, the gifts I'd selected that had strengthened his professional relationships, the nights I'd stayed up helping him prepare presentations. I researched our Bali vacation, confirming that cancellations could be refunded if done within the next week. I inventoried our home, identifying everything I had purchased, inherited from my family, or received as personal gifts. Next, I contacted a lawyer Alicia recommended, Lauren Griffith, who specialized in helping women in financially imbalanced marriages. During our consultation, she reviewed my documentation and outlined my options. "Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state," she explained. "This doesn't necessarily mean a 50-50 split of assets in divorce, but rather what the court deems fair based on multiple factors, including non-financial contributions to the marriage." "I'm not sure I'm ready to file for divorce," I said, "but I need to protect myself financially while I figure things out." Lauren nodded. "You're entitled to your fair share of joint assets. I recommend securing those funds in your own account before having any confrontation with your husband. Based on what you've told me, he may try to restrict your access once he realizes you're asserting independence." With Lauren's guidance, I developed a clear understanding of what constituted my fair share of our joint assets. She helped me calculate reasonable amounts based on both Massachusetts law and the specific circumstances of our marriage. At home, I continued my normal routine, maintaining the facade of the perfect wife while Jackson worked late and returned home smelling of unfamiliar perfume. I noted that his upcoming business trip to Chicago was scheduled for the following week, a 3-day conference that would give me the time I needed. I set up my own bank account at a different institution than the one we shared, using my maiden name and having statements delivered electronically to an email address Jackson didn't know about. I researched affordable apartments in neighborhoods Jackson would never visit, finding a modest 1-bedroom with a 6-month lease available immediately. Each night after Jackson fell asleep, I carefully sorted through my personal belongings, identifying what was truly important to keep and what could be replaced. I digitized important documents and stored copies in a secure cloud account. I located my birth certificate, passport, and other identity documents Jackson had insisted on keeping safe in his office. The final piece fell into place when I confirmed that Jackson's parents would be visiting the day after his return from Chicago, their traditional monthly dinner at our home. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. As I laid the groundwork for my departure, I felt a strange calm replacing the anxiety that had been my constant companion for years. For the first time in too long, I was taking control of my life rather than managing someone else's. The morning Jackson left for his Chicago trip, I kissed him goodbye at the door, playing the role of supportive wife one last time. "I've laid out your blue tie for the presentation," I said, straightening his collar. "And I've arranged for your dry cleaning to be delivered tomorrow." "Thanks," he replied distractedly, barely looking up from his phone. "Don't forget my parents are coming for dinner Friday. Mother wants your roast lamb." "I remember," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Have a safe flight." The moment his car disappeared down our tree-lined street, I set my plan in motion. I'd prepared a detailed checklist, breaking down each task into manageable steps to ensure nothing was overlooked in the limited time I had. First, I went to our bank. As a joint account holder, I had every legal right to make withdrawals, a fact the bank manager confirmed when I requested to transfer my fair share, exactly 50% of our joint checking and savings, to my new private account. "Are you sure you wouldn't prefer a cashier's check, Mrs. Parker?" the manager asked. "Electronic transfer is fine," I replied calmly. "And it's Miss Mitchell again, actually." Next, I called the travel agency handling our Bali vacation. "I need to cancel due to a family emergency," I explained. Since the reservation was in my name and had been arranged entirely by me, the process was surprisingly simple. The refund, all $15,000, was processed back to the credit card I controlled. At home, I began packing methodically, taking only what was undeniably mine: clothes, personal mementos, family heirlooms, and the jewelry I'd owned before marriage went into carefully labeled boxes. The expensive gifts Jackson had given me as apologies for forgotten anniversaries and missed dinners, the diamond bracelet after the holiday he spent working, the sapphire earrings following the weekend he disappeared to visit clients, I sold to a reputable jeweler downtown. Their value was considerable, and the transaction completely legal since they were gifts in my possession. I removed my name from all utilities and subscription services, canceling the housekeeping service that came twice weekly, the meal delivery program Jackson relied on for lunches, and the dry cleaning pickup he never bothered to manage himself. I unsubscribed from the concierge shopping service that selected his gifts for clients and the dog walking service for Baxter, our golden retriever who had always been more my companion than his. Throughout the process, I maintained meticulous records of every action, storing digital copies with my lawyer. Lauren had emphasized the importance of transparency. I wasn't hiding assets, merely securing what was legally mine while Jackson still had full access to his personal accounts and his half of our joint funds. On the second day, with large windows overlooking a small park, nothing like our sprawling Brookline home, but somehow more appealing in its simplicity. "How does it feel?" Alicia asked as we arranged my essential furniture, pieces I'd inherited from my grandmother that had been relegated to our guest room when Jackson decided they didn't match his preferred aesthetic. "Terrifying," I admitted, "but also like I can breathe for the first time in years." That evening, I returned to the house one last time. I deep cleaned every room, leaving the place immaculate as a final statement. In Jackson's home office, I left an envelope containing a detailed letter explaining my decision, along with complete financial records documenting exactly what I had taken and why it constituted my fair share. The letter was calm and factual, without the emotional accusations that might have given him ammunition to paint me as irrational. I outlined his betrayal, both the emotional affair with Amanda and the financial infidelity of hidden accounts. I detailed the years of diminishment I had endured from him and his family. Most importantly, I made it clear that this was not an impulsive action but a carefully considered response to systematic disrespect. I also left formal notification that I would be filing for divorce, with Lauren Griffith's contact information for his lawyer to use for all future communication. In the kitchen, I left a second note, this one intended for Vivian and Harold, who would arrive expecting dinner the following evening. Asterisk, I regret I won't be able to serve the roast lamb Vivian requested. Perhaps Jackson can demonstrate how valuable he truly is by preparing it himself. After all, someone so important surely can't be completely useless in the kitchen. Stephanie Mitchell, no longer the decorative but useless Mrs. Parker. Asterisk. With Baxter beside me, the adoption papers had always been in my name alone. I took one last look at the house that had been both my prison and my canvas. Then I locked the door, left my keys on the front mat, and walked away. At my new apartment, I turned off my phone to avoid the inevitable barrage when Jackson returned home the next day. I had given explicit instructions to Lauren to handle all communication, making it clear that I would not engage directly with Jackson or his family during the initial fallout. That night, in my new bed in my new life, I slept more peacefully than I had in years. Jackson's flight landed at 2:17 p.m. on Friday. I know this because my lawyer later shared the increasingly frantic timeline of his attempts to contact me, beginning with casual texts from the airport asking if I could pick him up instead of his taking a cab. By 3:45 p.m., when his cab pulled into our driveway, the messages had grown concerned. He'd been trying to call with no answer. At 4:12 p.m., the first furious voicemail arrived, his voice echoing through our empty foyer as he discovered the house meticulously clean but devoid of my presence. Stephanie, where the hell are you? And where's half our furniture? Call me immediately. The second voicemail came after he found my letter in his office. The controlled rage in his voice was chilling. You had no right to take that money. That's my money from my work. You've completely lost your mind. My lawyer will destroy you for this theft. Call me now. By the third voicemail, reality was beginning to penetrate his anger. The Bali trip is cancelled? Do you have any idea how this makes me look? My parents are arriving in 2 hours for dinner. What am I supposed to tell them? The stream of messages continued, shifting from threats to manipulation with remarkable speed. Baby, I know we've had some miscommunications. Whatever you think you heard, it's not what you think. Amanda is just a colleague. Please come home so we can talk about this like adults. By early evening, when Vivian and Harold arrived to find Jackson alone in an empty house with no dinner prepared, the messages turned to panic. My mother is absolutely livid. Dad's talking about calling the police for theft. Please, Stephanie, this is going to destroy my reputation if people find out. At least call me back. Alicia, who remained friends with several neighbors, provided me with second-hand reports of the chaos. Apparently, Vivian had been seen storming out of the house, declaring loudly that she knew that girl was trouble from the beginning. Harold had made several calls from his car, his face red with anger. Most satisfying was the report that Jackson had been spotted at the local grocery store, confusedly wandering the aisles with a handwritten list, attempting to buy ingredients for a dinner he had no idea how to prepare. Meanwhile, I began rebuilding my life with methodical focus. I updated my resume and LinkedIn profile, removing the 5-year gap by accurately listing my extensive event planning, budget management, and client relations work, simply changing from my husband's career to freelance consulting. I reached out to former colleagues, many of whom were delighted to hear from me and eager to provide references. On Monday morning, I interviewed for a marketing director position at a company that directly competed with Jackson's firm. My portfolio of past work, combined with my articulate explanation of my career path, impressed the hiring manager. By Friday, I had an offer with a salary that, while not equal to what Jackson made, provided me with complete financial independence. Lauren kept me updated on Jackson's increasingly desperate attempts to control the narrative. He had indeed consulted a lawyer, only to be informed that I had acted within my legal rights regarding joint accounts. His attempts to frame my actions as theft were quickly dismissed once my meticulous documentation was presented. His lawyer actually advised him to settle quickly, Lauren reported during our weekly call. You have a strong case for both financial support and division of assets given the length of the marriage and your contributions to his career. 2 weeks after my departure, Jackson's demeanor changed dramatically. The threats stopped, replaced by increasingly pathetic appeals. Stephanie, please, I miss you. The house is a disaster without you. I had to hire a cleaning service and they don't do things right. Can we please just talk? I didn't realize how much you did around here. I was on the phone with the electric company for an hour trying to figure out the bill. You always made everything look so easy. The manipulation was transparent now that I could see it clearly. Not once did he acknowledge treating me as less than an equal. Nor did he admit to his affair with Amanda, which was confirmed when Alicia reported seeing them arguing in the driveway of our former home. According to mutual connections, Amanda had quickly distanced herself when the financial scandal emerged. Apparently, she had been under the impression that Jackson was planning to leave me for her, not just conducting a side affair. When she discovered his financial situation was more complicated than he'd presented, her interest cooled considerably. Jackson's professional reputation suffered as well. Without me managing his schedule, wardrobe, and social connections, his polished facade began to crack. He arrived late to meetings, wore mismatched attire, and forgot important client details I had always carefully tracked for him. The absence of the dinner parties and social events I had orchestrated left a noticeable gap in his client relationship management. Meanwhile, I thrived in my new position. My experience managing complex projects transferred perfectly to corporate marketing, and my ability to handle difficult personalities, honed by years with the Parkers, made navigating office politics remarkably easy. For the first time in years, I was recognized for my intelligence and capability rather than my decorative value. 3 months after my departure, Jackson appeared at my office building, unshaven and visibly exhausted. He barely resembled the polished executive who had once dismissed my career as unimportant. 5 minutes, Stephanie, he pleaded as security prepared to escort him out. Just give me 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I agreed to speak with him in the public cafe across the street. You look good, he said, studying me with confusion, perhaps expecting to find me diminished without him. Instead, he faced a woman in a tailored suit with clear eyes and straight shoulders, no longer shrinking to make him feel larger. What do you want, Jackson? I asked, checking my watch. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. I want you to come home, he said, reaching for my hand across the table. I pulled back before he could touch me. I was wrong, okay? Is that what you need to hear? I was wrong and I miss you, and the house isn't a home without you. The house was never a home with me in it, I replied. It was a showcase for your success and a prison for my potential. That's not fair, he protested. I gave you everything. No, I interrupted. You gave me things. Beautiful, expensive things to compensate for taking my identity, my career, and my self-worth. The difference is now I understand the cost. His expression hardened. So that's it? 5 years of marriage thrown away over one misunderstood conversation. It wasn't one conversation, Jackson. It was thousands of small moments where you chose to diminish me instead of support me, where you laughed when your family called me useless instead of defending me, where you lied about Amanda instead of being honest. At the mention of Amanda's name, he flinched. She meant nothing. That's over. I'm aware, I said. Apparently, once your finances became complicated, your appeal diminished considerably. His face flushed with anger. You've made your point with this independence demonstration. How long are you going to punish me before coming home where you belong? I stood, gathering my belongings. I am home, Jackson. For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I belong. I placed my business card on the table. Have your lawyer contact mine for the divorce proceedings. Don't approach me in person again. As I walked away, he called after me. You'll regret this. Stephanie, you were nothing before me, and you'll be nothing again. His words, intended to wound, instead confirmed the absolute rightness of my decision. 2 weeks later, I encountered Vivian at a charity gala I was attending with my new company. Her eyes widened in shock at seeing me confidently networking with Boston's business elite, no longer as someone's wife but as a marketing executive in my own right. Stephanie, she said coldly, intercepting me at the bar. I see you've landed on your feet after abandoning my son. I smiled, noticing for the first time the insecurity behind her perfect makeup and rigid posture. I didn't abandon anyone, Vivian. I simply stopped accepting less than I deserve. Jackson is devastated, she said, though her tone suggested more concern for appearances than her son's emotional state. His father and I always knew you weren't committed to being a proper wife. You're right about that. I agreed, taking my champagne from the bartender. I was never interested in being a proper wife by your definition. But I was fully committed to being an equal partner. Something Jackson never wanted. Before she could respond, I added, by the way, I donated those pearl earrings you gave me for Christmas to a women's shelter fundraiser. They fetched a good price, which will help women rebuilding their lives after leaving unhealthy relationships. I thought you'd appreciate knowing they're serving a useful purpose. I left her sputtering indignantly, making my way back to my colleagues with a lightness in my step that had been absent during my entire marriage. 6 months after walking away from my life as Mrs. Parker, I stood in my office overlooking Boston Harbor, reviewing the quarterly marketing strategy I developed for our newest product line. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, catching on the simple silver bracelet I'd bought myself to celebrate landing the position of marketing director. Stephanie? The executive team loved the presentation, said my assistant Zoe, poking her head through the doorway. They've approved the full budget for the campaign. That's fantastic news, I replied, feeling the particular satisfaction that comes from professional recognition earned through genuine merit. My new life had taken shape with surprising speed. Therapy had become an essential part of my healing journey. Dr. Melanie Harris specialized in helping women recover from controlling relationships, and our weekly sessions helped me understand the gradual erosion of boundaries that had led to my situation. What you experienced was financial and emotional abuse, she had explained during one particularly illuminating session. The isolation from your career, the control of financial resources, the constant diminishment, these are classic patterns, not character flaws in you. Reconnecting with old friends proved both challenging and rewarding. Some relationships had withered during my marriage as Jackson subtly discouraged friendships he couldn't control. Others had remained dormant, waiting for rekindling. My college roommate Brianna flew in from Seattle for a weekend visit, bringing photo albums from our early career days that served as powerful reminders of who I had been before meeting Jackson. I always wondered what happened to that ambitious woman who was going to revolutionize digital marketing, she said as we flipped through images of my first industry presentations. She got lost for a while, I admitted, but she's finding her way back, stronger for knowing what she doesn't want. The legal aspects of dissolving my marriage proceeded with less drama than I had feared. Jackson's initial threats of protracted legal battles dissolved when faced with the reality that Massachusetts courts looked unfavorably on his behavior. Lauren negotiated a settlement that acknowledged my contributions to his career and our household, including compensation for the years of unpaid labor that had facilitated his professional advancement. He finally realized that fighting you publicly would damage his reputation more than settling fairly, Lauren explained when presenting the final agreement. Plus, I think seeing you thrive independently contradicted the narrative he'd created about you needing him. Jackson himself had attempted reconciliation several more times, each approach more desperate than the last. When flowers and apologies failed, he tried manipulation, then intimidation, and finally a performance of profound change. I'm in therapy now, he claimed during one unexpected phone call. I realize how I took you for granted. I've changed, Stephanie. I'm glad you're getting help, Jackson, I replied, But my decision is final. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned. His final attempt came in the form of a letter, delivered to my office rather than my home. He had never managed to discover my new address. The contents were surprisingly reflective, acknowledging at least some of his mistreatment and expressing what seemed like genuine regret. Had it arrived in those early weeks of uncertainty, it might have swayed me. Now it simply confirmed that I'd made the right choice in leaving. I filed it away with the divorce papers. Financial independence proved even more empowering than I had anticipated. Building my own credit history, managing investments, and making purchasing decisions without justification or permission restored a fundamental sense of agency. I established an emergency fund that would ensure I never again felt trapped by financial dependence, then began contributing to retirement accounts I controlled completely. My relationship with Alicia deepened from neighborhood acquaintance to true friendship. Her unflinching support during my transition had created a bond built on mutual respect, rather than social convenience. "You know what I admire most?" she said during one of our now regular Sunday brunches. "Not just that you left, but how methodically you rebuilt afterward. You didn't just escape, you thrived." One crisp autumn day, almost exactly a year after my departure, I encountered Vivian at an upscale department store. I had just finished selecting a dress for an industry awards ceremony, where I was nominated for an innovation prize when I spotted her examining evening gowns in a nearby department. Our eyes met in the mirror, her expression freezing in recognition. For a moment, I considered slipping away to avoid confrontation. Instead, I straightened my shoulders and approached her directly. "Hello, Vivian," I said calmly. She turned slowly, assessing me with critical eyes. "Stephanie, you're looking well." "Thank you. I am well." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us until she finally spoke again. "Jackson is seeing someone new. A lovely girl from a good family. Her father is on the hospital board with Harold." "I'm glad to hear it," I replied sincerely. "I hope he's happy." She seemed disappointed by my lack of reaction. "They're discussing marriage. She understands the importance of supporting a husband's career, unlike someone who expects to be treated as an equal partner rather than a decorative accessory." I finished for her. Color rose in her cheeks. "You had everything any woman could want. A beautiful home, financial security, social position. Except respect," I interrupted gently. "The one thing money can't buy. But what matters is what I say about myself now." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You know what's interesting, Vivian? When you called me useless, you actually gave me a gift. You forced me to examine exactly what I contributed and what I received in return. The math didn't add up." Her eyes widened slightly. "I hope Jackson's new relationship is different," I continued. "I hope he's learned that treating someone as property rather than a partner eventually leads to losing them altogether." As I turned to leave, she called after me. "He provided you with everything." I looked back one last time. "No, Vivian. He provided things. I provided everything else. The difference is now I provide for myself, including self-respect. It's priceless." Walking away from that encounter, I felt the final weight of my past life lift from my shoulders. The woman who had once intimidated me now seemed small and brittle, clinging to outdated notions of worth defined by men's achievements rather than her own. My friendship circle had expanded to include women from various backgrounds, professionals, creatives, entrepreneurs, all supporting each other's goals rather than competing for status. Our conversations revolved around ideas and ambitions rather than husbands' careers or household management. The depth of these connections made my previous social life seem hollow by comparison. I had even begun cautiously exploring dating again, though with fundamentally different criteria than before. The charming, ambitious businessman had lost his appeal, replaced by interest in men who demonstrated emotional intelligence, respected boundaries, and valued partnership over possession. Whether these explorations would lead to a significant relationship remained to be seen, but the freedom to choose based on my authentic needs rather than societal expectations felt revolutionary. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset over Cambridge, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The woman who had once shrunk herself to fit into someone else's vision had reclaimed her space in the world. The professional who had set aside her ambitions had rediscovered her capabilities. The wife who had accepted diminishment as the price of security had learned that true security comes from within. I opened my laptop to respond to an email about the upcoming marketing conference where I'd been invited to speak. Ironically, the same conference where I'd first met Jackson 8 years earlier. Life's circles sometimes led back to familiar places, but with the wisdom to choose different paths forward. The most profound lesson of my journey wasn't about marriage or divorce, financial independence or professional success. It was the simple, powerful truth that our value isn't determined by others' assessment, but by our own recognition of what we deserve. No one can make you feel useless unless you surrender the authority to define your worth. So if you're watching this and feeling undervalued in your relationship or life situation, ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped accepting less than you deserve? What could you build if you redirected all the energy spent managing someone else's life into creating your own? And leave a comment telling me about a time you reclaimed your power in a relationship that was diminishing you. Remember, recognizing your worth isn't selfish. It's the foundation of every healthy connection you'll ever build. Until next time, this is Stephanie Mitchell, reminding you that sometimes the most powerful word in the English language is simply enough.